Kevin Ma was born in Hong Kong but raised in Vancouver, one of the densest, most ethnically diverse cities in British Columbia, Canada. Surrounded by mountains, Vancouver is known for their thriving art, theater, and music scenes, all of which Kevin, at a young age, could care less for. Instead, to him, Vancouver was a place that neglected the one thing that he was extremely passionate about: fashion. Growing up far away from cities that fostered the culture he craved, Kevin began buying obscure fashion magazines and frequenting online sneaker forums, searching for the latest trends emerging out of New York, London, and Tokyo. At one point, he was even paying premium postage for access to Japan's luxury print magazines. If it was a piece of fashion-related content, he had to read it. After graduating high school, Kevin planned on moving to the United States and getting closer to the fashion industry, but ended up ditching the idea altogether. His parents were begging him to go to college and get a normal job, and although he disliked the idea, that's exactly what he did. While pursuing a double major in economics and psychology from the University of British Columbia, Kevin was glued to the internet, constantly looking for the hottest up-and-coming fashion trends he could find. In 2005, during his last year of school, Kevin started to get extremely bored with his education. The classes that he enrolled in were uninspiring to him, and he was constantly ditching lectures, looking for any excuse not to show up. One of his favorite excuses was that he needed to finish his blog. A few weeks ago, he had noticed that the topics covered in fashion magazines weren't being discussed online, and he wanted to change that. Using Blogger, Kevin created his own online sneaker journal and began sharing his thoughts on upcoming releases. Naming it HYPEBEAST, Kevin took the once derogatory term for a trend chaser and used it to fuel his content. When he wasn't making blog entries during class, Kevin was back home in his bedroom, staying up all night and writing about his interest in shoes. What started as a hobby quickly turned into an obsession, and Kevin soon found himself writing up to 5 posts per day. Although his blog was all he could think about, Kevin had just graduated college and decided to put it on hold. Instead of wasting his time writing, he took a job at a bank and began working in finance. But without school or studying to do, he now had extra time on his hands, and he started thinking about his blog again. Coming back to writing was easy, but to him, talking about sneakers was getting repetitive, and there were so many other topics that he wanted to touch on. So when there weren't new sneakers to discuss, Kevin began blogging about fashion and other lifestyle trends that he saw online. But even that wasn't enough for him. He envied tech and gadget websites who were sharing real-time updates on electronics and wanted his blog to be more like theirs. So, in addition to writing his own blog entries, Kevin started aggregating and posting all of the cool fashion-related content he was finding online. Before he knew it, his blog not only discussed sneakers, but was also covering everything that was deemed hype within youth culture. But as more content was put on his blog, it quickly became cluttered. In order to fix it, Kevin ditched Blogger altogether and moved his content over to WordPress. Now, instead of a blog, HYPEBEAST.com was looking more like a website. But before we get into it, we gotta run it back.
I'm just sitting on the TV watching couch. It get toxic, I ain't boxing. I unboxed me a Glock and I knocked him out. I need an ounce of that kush, I can't go without. I keep slurring my speech, I've been smoking weed I can't pronounce. Man, if anybody snitching, believe it's gon' get announced. But he take it or leave it, I'm sticking firm to the amount. If you seen your boy out in traffic, you must have been en route. Money stupid dirty, can't even put bucks in account.
Unlike Blogger, WordPress worked with Google AdSense, and for the first time ever, Kevin put ads on his website. A few days later, Kevin checked his AdSense account and was shocked. His website had already made $2 in ad revenue, and if that continued, he could save up enough money to buy a new pair of shoes. Now, more motivated than ever, Kevin started pumping out a ton of content, and people began visiting his website daily. Within 6 months, HYPEBEAST was generating so much money from ads that Kevin was able to make just as much money from his website as he was at the bank. And despite his parents' advice, he quit his job, left Vancouver, and moved all the way to Hong Kong. He no longer wanted to work in finance, and from then on, he made a promise to himself that he would reconnect with his roots, explore Asia, and become a full-time blogger. Although his website was doing well with Google AdSense, Kevin didn't realize how popular it was becoming. To him, he was just documenting his thoughts and interests, but to others, HYPEBEAST was their home away from GQ. By focusing on sneakers and streetwear, HYPEBEAST covered topics that other major publications weren't discussing, and readers respected the fact that it went against the norm. Like Kevin, HYPEBEAST readers became engaged in the content and would often go back and forth on the website's forum, turning simple topics into lengthy discussions. HYPEBEAST.com had become the general public's go-to for information about the ins and outs of men's fashion. But to Kevin, it was just an online blog that had good traffic. The thought that his website was being discussed in real life never even crossed his mind. But one day, while standing outside of a store, waiting in line for a sneaker release debut, Kevin heard the people in front of him talking about his blog. The guy in front of him was telling his friend that he had learned about the sneaker release from a website called HYPEBEAST. Apparently, on one of the forums, readers were planning to meet up at the store, and that's when Kevin learned that the group in front of him was not only there to buy shoes, but to meet people as well. Looking around, the guy immediately made eye contact with Kevin and asked him if he had also read about the sneaker release on HYPEBEAST.com without even realizing he was the owner of the website. Keeping quiet, Kevin nodded and turned the other way. On the outside, he kept it cool, but on the inside, he was doing everything he could to hide his excitement. For the first time in his life, Kevin heard his website being discussed outside of the internet, and he had just realized how influential it actually was. The group in front of him was hard proof that people were at the event and buying the shoes because of his blog. After that, Kevin began spending every waking minute liking, commenting, and subscribing, while also working on his website. Along with catering to his audience and improving usability, Kevin started dabbling in video-based content as well. And in 2008, just 3 years after starting HYPEBEAST, Kevin launched HYPEBEAST TV, a YouTube channel that reviewed the products being discussed on his blog. On top of that, Kevin also used HYPEBEAST TV to conduct interviews with brand owners and influencers alike, giving his audience an in-depth look at the brains behind the brands they were buying. Along with HYPEBEAST TV, HYPEBEAST also launched POPBEE in 2008 and started marketing women's fashion and beauty to Asian countries. In 2010, HYPEBEAST expanded yet again and launched their own music destination, HYPETRAK, which garnered the attention of artists like Lupe Fiasco. As a fan of the site, Lupe constantly tweeted about HYPETRAK, and with his connections in music, HYPEBEAST was introduced to the hip-hop world. At the time, even Kanye West was leaving comments on HYPEBEAST.com. And as time went on, Kevin continued grinding out content, and by 2012, HYPEBEAST was doing better than ever. The website was now attracting more than 3 million unique visitors a month, and page views were through the roof. HYPEBEAST.com had gone from a personal blog to now doing over 20 million page views a month. Now, with such a massive following, Kevin was looking at ways to expand HYPEBEAST, and one of his ideas was that he wanted to create his own online store. His idea for a store eventually came to fruition, and towards the end of 2012, HYPEBEAST launched HBX, an online digital retail space where readers could shop over 8,000 products from some of the biggest brands at the time. Some of the first brands on HBX were Marni, Rick Owens, Adidas, and APC. With the launch of HBX, readers could now find and shop the products that HYPEBEAST covered directly through the platform itself. In addition to launching HBX, Kevin was also in the process of finishing up a long-term passion project. Since a child, he had grown up fascinated with magazines, and since they helped him spark the initial idea for HYPEBEAST, he wanted to create one himself. Although many of his friends thought the idea was crazy, Kevin decided to do it anyway, and in 2012, he revealed to the world the first ever HYPEBEAST magazine. On the cover was Chris Van Assche, Dior's artistic director at the time, and on the inside, the magazine featured long-form journalism scattered with fashion editorials. With promotion on HYPEBEAST.com, the magazine was an instant success and sold out immediately. People even began flipping them for profit on eBay. And by creating this new quarterly magazine, Kevin opened up a whole new profit stream that allowed HYPEBEAST to sell their content as a tangible product. By 2013, HYPEBEAST was a staple in men's fashion, and for many brands, simply getting featured on their website was seen as a stamp of approval. With 78% of their readers buying the merchandise they saw on the blog, HYPEBEAST started catching the attention of mainstream consumers. Even Trinidad James mentioned their website in his 2012 breakout single, All Gold Everything. HYPEBEAST, we know about you. Don't buy shoes unless they're popular. With the word HYPEBEAST now synonymous with culture, their website was exploding in popularity. In November of 2014, HYPEBEAST.com was averaging 2 million unique monthly visitors, and despite the fact that they were making a ton of money, Kevin only employed a small team of about 20 people who helped him run the site. By 2015, so many readers were buying clothes from their website that they were able to bring in $99 million in revenue from HBX alone. On top of HBX, HYPEBEAST was still running ads, and with the website doing 46 million page views a month, making money was no longer an issue. As 2015 came to an end, Kevin did something unlike any other streetwear blog at the time and submitted an application for HYPEBEAST to become a publicly traded company on Hong Kong's stock exchange. And on April 11th, 2016, HYPEBEAST went public. In their IPO filing, HYPEBEAST said, "We possess a valuable name in the digital media industry that drives growth of our business, and our position as a trendsetter in the field of fashion allows us to attract international brand owners for our advertising services and to supply their branded products to our e-commerce platform." HYPEBEAST, as they stated, was a valuable brand name indeed. With 500 million shares listed on the market, HYPEBEAST made $65 million overnight, and Kevin's business now had an overall valuation of $270 million. In fact, they were the best performing stock debut that entire year. Now, with 2.3 million followers on Instagram, HYPEBEAST had streetwear culture in its grasp. But as more money started flowing in, Kevin wanted HYPEBEAST to cover even more topics. Personally, his interest had grown far beyond sneakers, and his goal was to educate people on all the amazing things happening around the world. With that in mind, HYPEBEAST moved towards more original content production and developed several digital content platforms to help them reach a wider audience, such as HYPEBAE, a destination for women's fashion, HYPEBAE Beauty, a destination for cosmetics, HYPEMAKER, a creative studio that helps brands create compelling stories through mixed media, and HYPEKIDS, which showcases flashy children in overpriced sneakers. With the combination of HYPEBEAST.com, HBX, and these new platforms, HYPEBEAST saw its revenue jump 77% in 2017. By March of 2018, HYPEBEAST increased their earnings by another 76%, and Kevin's business was now making over $49 million a year in revenue. Later that year, HYPEBEAST was named on Forbes' Best Under a Billion list, which highlighted 200 of the best performing Asia-Pacific companies with revenue under $1 billion. On top of that, Kevin was also featured on Forbes' Best Under a Billion Rising Stars list, which recognized him for the outstanding business he had built. Although he had just received 2 of Forbes' most prestigious awards, Kevin never let the success get to his head. To him, people who read his blog weren't just customers, they were family. Kevin wanted to connect with his audience in a more personal way, and to help him do so, he began working on a project called HYPEFEST. With the help of Hiroshi Fujiwara and Sarah Adelman, Kevin gathered a list of his top 50 favorite brands and invited them to partake in a 2-day festival located in the heart of Brooklyn, New York. On top of exclusive products from these brands, HYPEFest also featured live performances, art, discussion panels, and more, allowing people to physically experience the essence of HYPEBEAST in person. With costs mounting through the roof, Kevin was going back and forth with investors trying to figure out a price point for tickets that would not only cover the cost of the event, but make it profitable for HYPEBEAST as well. In order to cover the event, ticket prices would have to be outrageous, and that frustrated Kevin beyond all belief. HYPEFest was supposed to be his way of giving back to the community, but now it was looking more like a greedy event and less like a celebration of the culture he built. But with it scheduled to start on October 6th, they were just a few months out and the board desperately needed to make a decision on pricing. In the end, Kevin decided to pay for everyone's ticket out of his own pocket. And with over 10,000 people claiming tickets, we estimate that Kevin paid around $1.3 million so people could attend HYPEFest for free. By 2020, HYPEBEAST had grown even more, and with Kevin's newfound interest in golf, he decided to launch HYPEGOLF, a new platform under the HYPEBEAST umbrella. By connecting golf with culture and fashion, HYPEGOLF attracted a whole new audience, and in 2021, Kevin hosted his first ever HYPEGOLF Invitational in Miami. Around the same time he launched HYPEGOLF, Kevin also decided to launch HYPEBEANS, a project inspired by his realization of how important coffee is to a consumer. As Kevin traveled back and forth from Asia, he always found himself in coffee shops and was amazed at their ability to bring people together. Along with serving drinks, Kevin saw coffee shops being used for meetup locations, incubator hubs, and much more. It was then that he decided to launch his own retail coffee shop, and when HYPEBEAST opened up their first one, HYPEBEANS Seoul, it was an instant success. From there, he went on to open 3 other locations, HYPEBEANS New York, Tokyo, and Hong Kong. Today, in 2022, HYPEBEAST is stronger than ever. Kevin's simple sneaker blog is now one of the world's largest online publications for youth fashion and culture. Over the past 17 years, Kevin has created a sprawling multimedia empire. Although headquartered in Hong Kong, HYPEBEAST attracts millions of viewers worldwide, with 51% of their business coming from the US alone. For Kevin, his ambitions now go way beyond sneakers, and he is less focused on having his world revolve around fashion. Instead, whenever he travels, Kevin gets inspired by communities outside of his own and constantly finds himself discovering new books, music, and other nuances of culture. As far as his long-term vision for HYPEBEAST, Kevin stresses the importance of not having a business plan. To him, it's simply a matter of following his instincts and trying new things, because if you don't try, you'll never succeed. Ultimately, his goal is to have HYPEBEAST last way beyond his lifetime and become a platform that people still gravitate towards 100 years from now. Whenever he is asked what his greatest achievement is, Kevin always responds the same exact way: HYPEBEAST. And with that, I conclude the unboxing of Kevin Ma and his ever-growing blog, HYPEBEAST.